to Books Are Good Medicine, a podcast sponsored by the Shakopee, Mdewakanton, and Sioux community, featuring books and other Native American-focused teaching resources. I'm your host today, Allison Waka. In this episode, I am joined by two local Native authors, Art Coulson and Nicholas DeShaw. Art is the author of 20 books, graphic novels, and plays. He is a writer of Cherokee, English, and Dutch descent, and comes from a family of storytellers in all three traditions. Nicholas has written fiction for all ages, from sci-fi to picture books. He is Bois Forte Ojibwe, and his writing is greatly inspired by his Ojibwe culture. Both Art and Nicholas are also passionate about Indigenous lacrosse, a topic each of them has covered in their writing. In this episode, we chat about the importance of Native representation in children's literature and their exciting new upcoming books. Thanks for listening. Welcome, you two. This is the duo that I've been asking for over and over again, so I'm really, really happy to have you.
Sorry to disappoint you.
We're a duo now.
You are.
It seems that way.
You be Batman.
Well, it's such, seeing you, I got to see you both at Mall of America for one of your events, and it was just such a neat seeing how Art has been writing for quite some time. And then Nick, you're starting your writing journey. And it was just like this really cool vision that I saw both of you on the podcast together. And so glad to have you both here. And well, why don't you both introduce yourself and for our listeners?
Well, hello, I'm Art Coulson. I am a writer. I have been writing children's books for the past 12 years, I guess. My first book came out 12 years ago, and number 20 comes out on October 7th. So it's been quite a productive 12 years so far. We'll see. We'll see if it stays productive. I'm glad to be here.
Bonjour. We were tumistem indigo. We gissen to them. The big cone is a guy getting went to power and on a canoe play pitcher ganag. Got you in them to be a shy and uncle. I'm Nicholas DeShaw, I'm Bois Forte Ojibwe, Eagle Clan. And yeah, I'm glad to be here. I'm a writer also. I have one book out so far. It's called Loaf the Cat Goes to the Powwow. And another one coming down the pipeline. And a few others are kind of in the hands of editors. So hopefully I'll be having a lot more soon. Yeah. But Art's been a mentor to me over the last few years. And I'm glad to be here also. This is really cool.
Thanks for joining. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you both started writing?
It's interesting. When I was little, and I feel like every writer says this, like, I've written since I was a kid. And it's but I feel like it's kind of true for most people who write more professionally. But I really struggled with reading and writing as a little kid. But then once I kind of got over that, I don't know, around third grade or so, it just became something I couldn't get enough of. And I would write and craft stories just kind of on my own, more casually. And I never really thought about it too seriously. I did when I was a kid, but then as I got older and, life happens and you go other ways, I didn't really think about it too seriously until I was starting to get a lot of ideas that I really was excited about. And a friend of mine, shout out to Andy Busum, invited me to join a writers group. And I thought it was just for fun. And we went to a writers conference together. Actually, I think it was a sci-fi conference. We met our favorite author at the time, Gene Wolfe, and did an interview with him. And we didn't realize he was in his 80s at the time. And it actually turned out to be the last interview he ever gave. He had passed away within a year after that. Yeah. So we felt both lucky and sad to have been there for that. He's a pretty amazing person, and we're just huge fans of his writing. And kind of from there, I was kind of getting the bug to just like, maybe this is something I could do a little more seriously, more than just a hobby, more than just something I do casually. And there was an open call through Penguin Random House, a number of their imprints they're looking specifically for Native writers. And I kind of got lucky and landed a deal to write Loaf the Cat. And that kind of brought me to today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like Nicholas, I started at a young age as well. I come my mom's family is from Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, and I was raised by my maternal grandmother, who was a storyteller. And so I grew up hearing stories on her lap. And then on my father's side, my family is from England and Holland. And, filled with storytellers on that side of the family too, in those traditions. So, so from both sides of the family, I've got these storytellers, telling me stories from a young age. And then when I got out of college, I became a journalist. So I was a working journalist for about 25 years. That's how I got here. I was working at the Pioneer Press, and I worked there for 6 years before the paper was sold for the first time. And since then, I started writing books and haven't really looked back. So I've been writing my whole career, and it's about the only thing I'm good at, I think. I can't really fix a car. I can't really, I can't do much of anything mechanical, but I can write a book. So
your chili's not bad.
Yeah, chili's pretty good. I always figured if I wasn't a writer, I'd probably be a cook. But the hours for cooks are even worse than writers.
That's true.
Well, if you were to suggest, let's say, some youth or maybe teachers that see that a writer in their classroom, or what steps would you say for the youth to take? Maybe a writer or illustrator. What would you suggest?
I think, just writing or drawing, just doing the work. It's like anything else. You do more of it, you get better at it. And the more you practice, and you're never too young to start. There are lots of young people who get book contracts signed with agents before they can even sign a contract, before they're old enough to sign a contract, they have to have parents or a guardian sign the contract for. So it's never too young to start. But I think there's nothing like reading a lot in what, in the genres you want to write in. So, kind of, what the stories look like. And again, I'm talking about writing, but also it applies to illustrators as well.
Yeah.
And then put your work out there. And I think there's not a substitute for reading and writing a lot or illustrating a lot.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the best thing, just to do it, like it's just like anything else, you want to make varsity basketball. Well, get on the court and start dribbling, like you got to get those skills up.
Yeah.
But I think, we've talked from a teacher's perspective. I was a teacher for 10 years. And even today, I remember distinctly the teachers who really encouraged my writing, or who said that I was a good writer. And that really stood out to me. So just even that little bit of encouragement just really can go a long way to helping them to go, to take it, farther than they maybe thought they could. I like to talk about Linda Lagarde Grover, who was my professor at UMD. And I took a number of her classes. She was a mentor and advisor to me there. And when I'd write an essay for her classes, it wasn't creative work usually, but it was usually essays like you write for college. And she always really praised my writing, and that really meant a lot because she's of course gone on to be a very successful, really cool writer. She's also Bois Forte. Her and my grandmother were friends. So that really meant a lot and really kind of propelled me in a lot of ways to today. So if you're a teacher, if you have a student who has promise or even just interest, just always be encouraging. That just really means a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also don't forget that we as authors do school visits. So
right. That's true too.
I mean, I think back when I was in school and when they'd bring an author into the school, how excited I was as a kid to be able to see somebody who actually had written the book that I was reading. And I'm not just saying that to promote my school visit, right. But I do think, for teachers, it's a great resource to consider having an author or illustrator come into your classroom and talk about the work. So the kids can see that there are so many. I wish I had known back in my formative years all the various things you could do as a writer. I mean, I might have ended up on a lot different career paths than what I end up on had I known that, about writing for television, writing for feature films, that sort of thing, writing for graphic novels, writing for games, writing for video games. There's there's so many places where you can be a writer. Yeah. And it just never occurred to me as a young person. And I didn't really see a lot of people coming in there. You'd have people come in who'd written a book, and that's fine. But I mean, I think that, teachers can think broadly about writing and the careers that are available to kids, because there's so much you can do as a writer. Yeah. Express yourself clearly. The world's open to you.
Oh, good. Yeah. Cool. Thank you. I think, one of the things that you both, talked about just a few minutes ago before we got online was, graphic novels. And as a kid, there weren't even around really.
Yeah.
There was comic books,
Sure.
but I feel graphic novels are completely, and my niece is obsessed with them. And I think, so popular now, and you're both getting into graphic novels. And can you tell us a little bit what you think about graphic novels? Is that a different writing way, or how does that all work?
Different, right?
Yeah, very different. No, that's where I started, actually. I started writing a graphic novel when I was like, I want to do something like long form. I want to do more than just a short story. And it was a graphic novel. But they're huge. They're so valuable. And they're actually like one of the most valuable tools for literacy, because, a lot of times you have like the words are broken up into small, it's not like a whole page of text.
Right.
And it's really helpful, especially for a student who might be struggling with their reading, to be like, I can't read this word, but I can see this picture and maybe I can get some context from this.
Yeah.
And we see as well, often in graphic novels, there's actually a wider vocabulary a lot of times.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the nature of it, because like you don't have a whole page of text. You have to like really get your point across in this little bubble.
Okay.
So you got to really pick the right words.
Yeah.
And so I think when you're working in that medium, you think maybe more broadly than you would in like a more typical novel format. So they're a very, very valuable tool for that. And, I think that the transition from graphic novel to a more traditional novel is not as big as people think. Like, and it also is a good feeling to finish a book. I keep circling back to like, students who are learning to read, or who are just, maybe not sold on reading, but like you get a 200-page graphic novel and you read it in 2 weeks. That's a good feeling. That's this thick book. You might have not felt you could do that with a typical novel, but a graphic novel is maybe a little more approachable. And it's just an amazing storytelling medium. And even as a kid, circling back for a second, when I was kind of starting to get into writing as a little kid, I would want to draw the comics. I would like want to create comics like that, but I realized I wasn't very good at drawing. So, but yeah, huge fan of them. I think they're an amazing medium that is getting more recognition, but needs even more.
Yeah. Awesome.
And sometimes when I talk about graphic novels, I'm using it as a catch-all for both graphic novels and for comic books, and things like manga as well. I was a huge comic book reader when I was a kid. I lived all over the world when I was a kid. And so, we didn't have like American television when I lived my dad was in the military when we lived overseas. So we just go to the base and, go to the base exchange or department store. And my parents would always buy us comic books and books and things like that. And so I was constantly gobbling down comic books. And then when I got a chance to write a couple, one thing that really helped me was I had previously written a TV pilot, and writing a script for a comic book or graphic novel is a lot like writing a script for a television show or a feature film or a play, a theater play. It's much the same form. And I tell kids, my first couple of comic books were standard 28-page comic books, but the script itself was about 60 pages. Because you have to be very, descriptive, because I'm communicating with the illustrator in the script. It's more like a letter to the illustrator. Here's what I'm seeing in my head as I'm writing this, because only maybe 400 or 500 of your words are actually going to be in that entire comic book, right? But that's 60 pages. Like, okay, I see this as a 2-page spread with a big picture of this, and then these 6 panels across the top, and then each panel is this.
Oh my goodness!
This. And so you're describing what you're going to see on the page, but also giving the illustrator freedom to, if the illustrator has a different vision, I trust the artist. And I'm not a visual artist. I have a vision in my head, but I find that if I let the artist take it in another direction, the artist usually takes it in a better direction. And so I don't want to put handcuffs on there. But here's what I'm seeing as I'm writing this to give them a sense. Here's what, in my mind with the mood of the places. Here's what the setting's like. Here's what the characters look like. But then give the artist the free hand to do it. And like Nicholas said, I think that it really is an accessible form for struggling readers, but also for kids who are just voracious readers. Because I still remember going, when we would go to the exchange and I just grab and I was a huge horror comic reader. I wasn't so much into superheroes, more into the scary ones, the horror ones. So I'd have to grab everyone that I saw, and take them home. And of course you read them in the car, before you get home, and then read them over and over and over again. it was, and like Nicholas, I tried to illustrate my own too, but I discovered early on, like Nicholas, my strength was more in the writing. More in the writing. Trust your artists. Yeah, there are some great people. Like if you look at somebody like Jerry Craft, who's been very successful at writing graphic novels for kids. But he's also an illustrator, so writer, illustrator. I have mad respect for people who can do both well.
Yeah. I feel like it would be like two sides of the brain or something.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
But I think it's also, I teach a class at the Loft for in children's literature. And right now we're kind of in a couple of segments where we're talking about writing for visuals, where I just, in my last 2 lessons have been about writing for graphic novels and how you have to really think visually. And sometimes as a writer, you kind of sit there in like you're in a black box theater and the people are saying things and you're having them go across the stage, but you don't really have it all described. But when you're writing visually, you have to really describe everything that's going on in the scene and what everything looks like, so that the illustrator knows where to take it. And, we could just talk about graphic novels.
Yeah, there's so much to say, honestly.
I mentioned before we started that, I'm very excited about a project that I've been trying to get started for years. And I think I'm finally at a point where I'll be able to start it maybe later this year. We'll have to see how the other projects I'm working on go.
Well, I'm glad that you all are making native graphic novels. I think I always think of, the kids in my family and having that resource and being able to say, oh, this is written by a native and a native is reading it and like turning the pages. It just really warms my heart and just.
Well, if your kids haven't, it might be a little old for your kids, but there's Stephen Graham Jones has Earth Divers comic series.
Really?
That's a series of comic books out now, and I'm not caught up yet, so no spoilers.
I haven't even started those. I've been out to read for a long time.
Yeah. It's sci-fi.
Okay.
I historical fiction, sci-fi,
kind of melding of the two. Yeah. Alternate history.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
But there's time jumping in it, and it kind of makes it sci-fi, time travel.
So and it's a series.
Yeah.
Okay.
More PG-13, I think.
Okay.
Maybe.
That's
maybe.
There's some violence in it, and some strong themes.
Okay, awesome. Well, that's a good record.
Really good for adults, though.
Yeah.
For those of you like me who've never outgrown your obsession with comic books,
and for young adult too, I feel like a lot of adults are reading YA for that release and that like it's.
You're starting to see that genre broken down. It's kind of like middle grade is now early middle grade and late middle grade. For the kids who are like tweens and then the kids who are maybe early teens. Then you got YA, you get the young YA, which is like the kids who are like 13, 14, 15. And then you've got, the older adult YA, which is more like people my age reading. You read a book and say, oh, that was YA? I had no idea. It's just a good book.
It's okay to like YA if you are not YA.
I mean, early on in working for the libraries, there was, and I think maybe in classrooms too, where, they need to stick with their, and now it's that barrier that is broken down where you just go in the library and choose whatever draws you. And so I'm really.
My youngest daughter was reading adult books when she was in like late elementary school. And we went to her teacher and said, do you think this is appropriate? We just, as parents, consider there's like a really lot of strong themes in the books. And her teacher said, let her read whatever she wants to read. And I'm like, well, God bless you.
Yeah,
That's kind of the answer I wanted. But I also, as a parent, wanted to make sure I wasn't, pushing her. But, basically whatever your kid. And then she said, if you have a good relationship with your daughter, she'll come to you if she has
any questions,
an issue, question or issue with what's going on. It was more like, it seemed like for a while, every book she read, somebody was taking their own life. And she was just really into those very emotional and kind of books that had a sad edge to them. And, but I think that, she was always willing to come to my wife or to me and say, hey, this book.
Yeah. What does this mean?
This bothered me.
Yeah. Yeah.
We talk about it. Yeah.
Awesome. That's good advice. And another thing you both are very into is lacrosse. And so
it's my favorite city. Just kidding. I don't know if I've ever been there. Sorry, Lacrosse. I've driven by.
I've driven near it. Yeah,
I've driven by. I've driven on the other side of the river.
Right.
Well, we were chatting about lacrosse and how we're really lucky here in the metro actually to have Twin Cities Lacrosse and have some really great programs for kids and we were able to. My son was able to partake a couple weeks ago, and I just loved it because there were littles playing 4 or 5 years all the way to adults all in the same game. And I had this like feeling this is how our ancestors would play, right? We wouldn't say, oh, only this grade, only this, and have that the older ones took care of the younger ones, showing them. It was just really beautiful, and thankful for that opportunity here in the cities. But why don't you, if you could share a little bit about your lacrosse stories and maybe you both playing or what your thoughts are on lacrosse. And
I grew up playing lacrosse. I started playing in 2001. And at the time I wanted to do a sport, but I've always been this like kind of like sort of fringe ideals, I guess. Like I never want to do what's like the popular thing.
Yeah.
So I thought like, what's the weirdest sport I can think of that I could do? And I landed on lacrosse, and I was new in my area at the time in Southern Michigan. And I really loved it. And I learned kind of more the native heritage of the game as I went on. And that was really important to me. I didn't have a lot of other ways to connect with my Indigenous identity growing up other than lacrosse and Manuman, wild rice. That was kind of it. And so I had seen pictures and stuff of our traditional game, but I kind of thought it was one of those things that was extinct, like it didn't exist anymore. Until I was a PE teacher in Duluth, and Frankie Jackson and John Hunter came up to do a presentation. Yeah, and I saw this. I'm like, wait, what? This is like people are still doing this. And so I just was hooked, and it was a time where I was trying to find a way to reconnect with, Anishinaabe culture and stuff, because it was kind of a rough time in my life. I was going through, I was not hanging out with a good crowd. I was kind of getting away from that part of my identity. And I didn't kind of realize until that point that it was actually like very unhealthy for me. And so that was like such a way back in that was just so valuable. And so I really became I was just gung ho from then on. Played as much as I could. I moved down here, got involved with Twin Cities Native Lacrosse, coached a little bit, and I play as much as I can. When my son was born, we kind of revived a tradition of giving a child-sized stick. So he has a child-sized stick that he's played with since before he could walk. So he's going to come up with this game. He's going to come up never knowing anything, but that this game is
the
there
existence.
for him. Yeah. So, I can talk about some of my writing and research around that too, but I want to give Art a chance to.
Yeah. I mean, as Nicholas said, because the game is a native game, we've known it our whole lives. Back home in Cherokee Nation, we play a really traditional form of the game called stickball. We play with 2 sticks, 2 hickory sticks. And with a much smaller ball than they play with up here. And so I like to play when I'm home. I usually play during the Cherokee National Holiday. We have a men's game. It's like Saturday night at 9:00 on the high school football field. There's 30 guys on the side, full contact, no pads.
Oh my goodness.
And we don't stop the game unless the stick breaks. And so you just play and until the time is up. And it's fun. I got racked up the last time I played just before the pandemic. And I may have to hang up my sticks. I'm just getting, kind of up there in years. I'm not the young man I think I was. I don't bounce back as much as I used to, or as quickly as I used to. I still get out every now and then and play the community games here with John and Twin Cities Native Lacrosse. And, I do like to keep playing the traditional game. I was on a league here. I was on a mixed age, mixed gender league back in, gosh, I can't remember how long ago it was, but it was playing the modern game. And, it's kind of, you feel so restricted when you're wearing gloves and shoulder pads, a helmet or mouth guard. I'm like, what? I'm so used to being out there just shorts and a t-shirt, we don't even wear shoes, but there's a lot less contact. So probably glad of that. I might have to go back to the more modern games so I don't get so beat up with sticks. But yeah, I mean, for us, lacrosse, for folks who don't know, I mean, many of the people in the audience are going to be native people who know about lacrosse and the various roles it plays in our culture. We play for fun, of course. It's a game. And we call it the creator's game because we believe it was given to us by the creator to play for his amusement. And so that's why we play it, and we try to have good thoughts when we're playing it. We try not to be bad sports or say bad things when we're playing it because we're playing it for the creator. But it's also for us, at least in my tradition, we use it as part of some of our religious ceremonies, and we also use it as a medicine game. So when somebody's sick or somebody's going to be traveling, we'll play a medicine game for them. And we do that here too in Twin Cities Native Lacrosse. I still remember playing a couple of games when we had people in the hospital. When you play a game, you set up the goals right outside the hospital so you can play a game so that person can see you playing the prayer. So it's a prayer for somebody, right? Yeah. And so, I mean, lacrosse has been really a strong part of our culture. And we say as Cherokee people for like 12,000 years, we've been playing the same sport, and we still play the traditional form of the game to keep it alive. And I like Nicholas said, we've seen the resurgence in recent years, and I'm glad to see it really coming back in our communities. When I go down to Oklahoma, I see that their lacrosse, we have just a single goal, like outside of some of our tribal buildings, and they'll have sets of sticks that people can come out and just grab a stick and some ball, grab a ball and some sticks and play a pickup game at lunchtime. So I think it's really good to see that out there, that we keep that connection.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're doing research on it. So are you using some of like Art's book creator's game? Or
I did read his book way before I met him. And I got to bring my copy to have you sign it. So
authenticate it.
Yeah.
It's the value on eBay.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'm just always into research. Like, it's always an area of interest to me. And I kind of would get these hints that the game never went away. I think Cherokee Nation and some other people who play with two sticks, they've had that tradition very strongly. Haudenosaunee have never lost that tradition, but you didn't see the Great Lakes style. It's the one with the rounded head of the stick, anywhere. But I'm like, but it would pop up here and there. And so I talked to kind of the guy who everyone traces. I learned from Dan Inham. And he was kind of the one who was really bringing it to a lot of people.
Yeah.
We mentioned John Hunter. He taught John Hunter and stuff. And he's a Oneida and Stockbridge guy. And then I asked him, I'm like, so where'd you learn? He said, I learned from this guy, Buddy Davids, back in the 80s, who was a Stockbridge guy. And I'm like, interesting. So I got to go out to Stockbridge, and the museum staff there were really generous with sharing with me. I learned Buddy Davids learned from another guy whose last name was Davis or Davies, who was a Menominee guy. And from everything I could find so far, the game wasn't played through a lot of communities who used to have it across Minnesota and Wisconsin, except for Menominee. So it seems that Menominee really have kept the game going. And other communities it would pop up here and there and kind of flare up and kind of go out. But for kind of the lineage of where a lot of people today who are kind of big movers and shakers in the game can trace back there. And again, that's not the whole story. I'm still, there's a lot more to learn. And I'd like to get out to Menominee, to Kashina, to actually talk to folks out there and go through their museum.
I can introduce you.
I'd love that. That'd be great. But this game is so powerful, and it's such a powerful storytelling thing. I wanted to create stories around it. And so right now I'm working on a graphic novel that's set 90 years in the future, where the game is just huge. And I was really inspired by here in Minnesota, we have this tradition of these neighborhood hockey leagues. Well, what if they were neighborhood lacrosse leagues, traditional leagues?
Yeah.
And that, we have the boys and girls high school tournament. That's such a big deal here. So I'm like, okay, well, what if it was a traditional lacrosse tournament? Yeah. And so it's kind of a Sandlot meets Mighty Ducks.
I love it.
But about traditional lacrosse. So it's a funny story, but it's also an exciting sports story. And there's an editor from a publisher looking at it right now. So fingers crossed they can land a deal there. Yeah. But that's gonna be a graphic novel. And I really want it to be a graphic novel because I want people to see this is what it looks like. This is the game.
Right.
Yeah. It's hard to describe. And if you don't know that, I'm talking about this kind of stick, you might imagine, the modern game with the plastic and the metal sticks. And that's not what we're talking about.
Right. Exactly.
So yeah, I'm excited about that.
Oh, very cool.
And one of the reasons that I have the family, the Skinway family in the Creators game, the main character, Travis, and his family are from Leech Lake, is because, as Nicholas was talking about the history of the game, one of the places they were keeping the game alive back like in the 1920s and 30s. And I found this out because Robert DeShaw, who was the illustrator of that book from Red Lake, had done some research and found that they were holding these games at Ball Club in Leech Lake. And they were having tournaments of Ojibwe people from around Turtle Island would come to Ball Club, Minnesota to play lacrosse. And so it was these men, the best lacrosse players from all over, traditional lacrosse players from all over Turtle Island would come and play. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to set the family from Leech Lake, because to honor that that tradition from back in the, what is almost like the prehistory of lacrosse in Minnesota, or the resurgence of lacrosse in Minnesota.
I want to touch on for the Creators game book. Oh, and I'll share like Fishing on Thin Ice, and this is a series with
right. Yeah.
What I really like, just to touch on this really quickly, is the it's early on chapter books, right? So I feel like there is some absence a lot of times there's a lot of picture books, there's a lot of even YA, but this is like so when you're starting to get out of picture books and still need some of the pictures and so forth, and so I think it's really great that you've written in this format.
Yeah, that kind of early middle grade. That
right.
Yeah, it's for the kids, like you said, it's kind of early chapter books. And that series in particular, the hunting and fishing series from Capstone, is called Wilderness Ridge. And I think there are 16 books, might be more now. I've written 4 of them in that series, 2 on hunting and 2 on fishing. And what's really great about that series, it's about kids who like to hunt and fish. And there aren't a lot of books. There's a lot of how-to books. I read a lot when I was a kid, because I hunted and fished when I was a kid a lot. And I read a lot of, Field and Stream magazine. All these different magazines and books about how to do it. There weren't a whole lot that were just kids doing it.
Right.
And so that when they came to us with that idea, it's, that sounds fun. So I did ice fishing book. I did one on bass fishing, one on whitetail deer, and one on pheasant hunting. And I picked, they gave us a list of topics they wanted to cover. And I was picking ones that I'd actually done, because I didn't want to have to do a lot of research. It was the pandemic. I was just trying to have some money coming in. Not to be too mercenary, but I was trying to get paid. Yeah. But,
I really appreciate this. And I think, Art, one of the things I wanted to ask you about too is you mentioned writing, working with the Loft, and also your work with All My Relations and with Native American Community Development Institute. So what, if you could just tell us a little bit about that program?
Yeah. So All My Relations Arts, it was a program that actually Diane Wilson started. It's called the Native Authors Program, and it's an 18-month program. Nicholas came through the second group.
Oh, there you go.
Which was the first group that I was able to
I didn't
coordinate.
know that.
That's how we acquainted.
But Diane started the program with a group, I believe, 8 writers for the first cohort. And they did 18 months. And then Diane was doing other things, and they had an opening, and they came to me and asked me if I would do it. And I said, well, sure. I love to work with Native authors. And so we had 12 in our group and worked with them for 18 months and introduced Nicholas to my agent, and he talked to her on the phone and ended up signing with her. So, which was not.
Did you get commission?
Not the plan. Not the plan. Yeah, I wish it was like multi-level marketing. No, it's like the mafia. But no, but there were, the writers I got to work with are just, many of them I knew already through, the community. But many of them I was meeting for the first time, but they were just so talented. I was fortunate. It's very little work when you coordinate a program where everybody's just really good. You just almost have to just kind of just keep them on the path they're on and show them some other things maybe they can consider doing. And really enjoyed working with Nicholas, and our anthology just got published, called Our Stories, Past, Present, Future. And so works by all the writers. And so there's poems, there's novel excerpts. Nicholas has a really great piece in there, sci-fi piece that people ought to check out. That's it's told through radio transmissions, and they're out of order in time, and it's kind of an alternative future history. It's very cool. I don't want to give too much away, but people really enjoy that piece. One of the pieces that really stuck with me. Emily Poupart has, who works at, if people know her from her work at Birch Bark Books, wrote another great dystopian sci-fi piece, and it was really another really good one. I don't want to damn anybody else by not mentioning all the pieces in there. I thought really turned out great. But we're gonna have a release for that probably after this podcast comes out, or before this podcast comes out. We're going to do that this Friday, actually. And then we'll be doing readings over the summer in the Twin Cities, in Duluth, and in Superior. Oh, and Bayfield, Wisconsin. People should look out for those. Yeah. We'll have some of the writers there doing readings and doing signing the books. It's very cool, coming out from Black Bears and Blueberries Publishing, which is one of our favorite Native publishers.
Yep, we had them on actually.
Very cool. Yeah, Tom and Betsy just been big supporters of the program, and
they're awesome.
The book, very excited that it's finally out, and we can see it out in the world.
Where would you be able to pick it up at?
I believe Birch Bark placed an order for it. Okay. I'm not sure where else. Okay. Well, if they go to All My Relations Arts, I'm sure they can get a copy there as well.
Okay.
And I think you can order directly from Black Bears and Blueberries.
They're great. Publisher. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but it's a great program. This year we have 10 people in the program, or this 18 months we have 10 people in the program, and we're just a few months into it. It's very cool, very eclectic group of writers, just like the last time. We have poets. We have one person who's written feature films who wants to branch out into fiction. Yeah. We have other folks who are fiction writers, creative nonfiction writers. So just everything. It's a good group again. I'm fortunate to be able to do it.
Yeah, I think it's a program that should be mimicked across the U.S. and other cities and nations. And
the stated goal is to get people published. I mean, it's not just about coming and and having fun writing for a little bit. It's about let's put you on the path to publication.
Right.
Well, whatever that looks like. I mean, if you want to self-publish, if you want to be published traditionally, let's get you on that path.
Yeah. I love that, because that's what we need.
Yep.
So, Art, I have one last question for you. Your book, Look, Grandma, Ni, Elisi, was recently named as a best STEM children's book by the National Science Teaching Association and featured on Reading Rainbow Live, which, I mean, is a dream come true, I would think.
It really was, yes.
What did that recognition mean to you?
Well, I might as well hold up the book.
Yeah.
First, I want to say that it was a challenge for me as a writer, because as a writer, I'm not much of a mathematician. But they came to us with with an idea to write children's picture books, really for pre-kindergartners and up to young, first, second graders, about math concepts. But they wanted to make them real stories about the math concepts. And the one they assigned me was volume and capacity. So I was throwing out a bunch of ideas and came up with this idea, and worked with a mathematician from MIT who was assigned to the project, who made sure that the math concepts we were explaining them correctly. It might have mentioned I wasn't much of a mathematician, but it was really fun to kind of work cultural stuff in. So the book's about a family that makes Cherokee marbles, which is one of our traditional games. And when you think of marbles, you might be thinking of the little marbles in the schoolyard, but Cherokee marbles are more the size of billiard balls. In fact, a lot of people play with actual billiard balls when you play the game. And it's a game we play at our holiday, but you'll also find people playing it, they'll set up a course at their house, and it's a big L-shaped course, and you play your way up and down it, and it's very competitive. You can knock competitors' balls out of the way and things like that. But to be able to bring cultural stuff like that to a book for young people who aren't from our culture, and to be able to see the way that math concepts express themselves in our culture. And the fact that it was on Reading Rainbow, the publisher called and asked for my permission for Reading Rainbow. I said, when Reading Rainbow calls you, the answer is you just tell me yes. You don't have to ask my permission. And,
let me think about it. Yeah.
And they actually, person from Book Talk read the book on Reading Rainbow and spent over 20 minutes on the show reading my book. And almost immediately, for people who don't know about publishing, you get paid in advance, which is an advance on royalties. And then if your book sells enough and you earn back your advance, and you start getting royalty payments. And most books, the majority of books, don't ever earn back their advance. But this book earned back its advance in 3 months. And that's all because of Reading Rainbow. So it's meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
And, just being able to write that book. I'm thankful to Charles Bridge, which is the publisher in Boston. They came up with the idea, and it's not just Native books; it's books from all different cultures, and people writing about, stars, and writing about, different math concepts, and subtraction, addition, but writing from their cultural perspective, so kids can see just everyday people from different cultures.
Right. And I just like how positive it is. Math is sometimes such a negative experience for us and I feel like when we were, natives and our ancestors teaching, it was more of a positive experience. Yeah. And so that's what I felt with this book, is that it was coming back, and it just made it fun again. Right. Yeah. This like idea that math is all around, and it doesn't have to be that like, we all remember that like finishing that minute test, and hopefully it's but this is a really good resource for. Yeah.
Well, one last thing I'll say about the book. I was really excited that it's been translated into Spanish. Oh. And it's also been translated into Cherokee language. And when they translated it into Cherokee language, it's used in our immersion school in Oklahoma. And they made a teachers and student workbook also in the Cherokee language. And a fellow from our tribe, John Ross, who's a linguist in our tribe, did the translation for it. And that book is available for free to Cherokee people and through the tribe, because the tribe paid the publisher to publish it in Cherokee language. And it's also available if you go to my website, artcoulson.com. You can download a PDF of it so you can see what it looks like in the Cherokee language, both that and the.
Oh, and the look at you. That's so awesome. Cool.
Yeah, I was really glad that they were able to do something like this. Yeah. So they're able to teach math concepts in the immersion school in our language, in a book that's about, our culture. So it's very cool.
Really thankful for your time today. And please keep the books coming. Really, yeah, good. Really enjoy it, and just appreciate it. So thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having us,
Allison.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Books Are Good Medicine. Subscribe to our channel on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can also visit our website, booksaregoodmedicine.com, to find episodes and resources, or to send us a comment. This podcast is sponsored by the Shakopee, Mdewakanton Sioux community and produced by Goff Public. Our theme music is Stomp Dance by Blue Dog. The opinions expressed on the Books Are Good Medicine podcast by its co-hosts and guests are their own in their personal capacities and do not necessarily reflect the views of any organization with whom they are affiliated or of the podcast sponsor.